like it's been ages since we've all been together.
Because it has been.
It has.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing.
Well, maybe
actually.
that's why then.
I know. It's good to be back. 2022.
We are on the rags still.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
Definitely.
No kidding.
Because
Literally.
Yes.
Because you are,
Risa,
Amy.
and I'm Gloria.
Sloan.
That's why we're rags.
The rags.
How is everybody? Anything good going on in the world which isn't terribly
Hardly.
good at the moment?
You know what? There actually is.
What?
There's so much. The Polish people, the Hungarian people.
Yeah, that's right.
Like
Zelensky.
all of
That's true.
Zelensky is something
Yes.
good.
well, he's
How-
an amazing human being.
Yes, he is.
I have to say.
Is he married?
What a
Yes.
leader.
Yes,
Yes.
he is.
With two beautiful children.
And, well, you all know this, because we'll talk about that too, that he was an actor and a comedian.
Stand up. Stand up. And a Dancing with the Stars winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's International Women's Day, and I just read this I just read it in one of my news feeds that there was some company that was selling sex toys for International Women's Day.
Was that Newsfeed Hustler?
I don't think so.
Oh, just wondering.
No, I don't think so. But it is. So I'm happy to be doing this with all these amazing women.
Yeah, that's
Me
right.
too. Me too. Me too.
Grateful for all the support and friendship and family that we have.
No, it's true.
Because
Kind of a tearjerker, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of it is.
Yeah.
But you know what else this has done?
What?
And I'm so sorry this is going on.
It stopped COVID from being discussed.
It has stopped everything from being discussed. Everything that, has become so, I hate saying this, but all this wokeness, everything is gone now. Because all of us are realizing that all these silly things we piss and moan about is really insignificant compared to what's going on with those poor people in the Ukraine.
course. And also, interestingly enough, since all of Russia has been cut off of Facebook, notice all the Russian bots are gone. Like all of that crazy
Yes.
inflammatory
Yes.
I don't know what that
posting.
is.
In
What?
the last couple of days, the entire, it feels like Facebook and Instagram have been hosed down with all
But
of this
you
like
know, and I don't mean to interrupt,
crazy
but the
rhetoric. No, go ahead.
Russians aren't getting in. They
No.
have no idea what's going on.
They don't.
Obviously,
they don't.
some
They
do
don't.
that are in the streets, but a lot of them do not believe.
I have an acquaintance that said that the way that she's getting information to them is by doing restaurant reviews and posting that kind of information on a restaurant review for those in Russian restaurants.
Wow.
Really?
Right.
Hopefully,
Remarkable.
and I think it's happened. I haven't seen the last hour, but we are ceasing to buy oil. The entire
Yes.
world
Yeah.
is
Yes,
going
we
to
are.
cease.
It's about
and I
bloody
don't know
time.
Well,
why
it's about
we
time,
are
right,
buying
yes.
it from them in the first place. We've got plenty in
Right.
our own country.
We got plenty coming from Canada also,
well,
but
I'm
we're
in
not
that
using
business.
that.
We got plenty right here in the United States of
Yeah,
America.
well, okay.
To take
Yeah.
care of our country for sure.
But that's good.
Yeah.
We're cutting those people off, and those wealthy friends of his that they're trying to seize their ill-gotten.
Yachts and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to less depressing times in the world today, we were talking about this great resignation that we have discussed before and how it's still continuing on and people are still making big life changes. And I think in light of this war, it's probably going to be even more so because people are
they're reassessing the priorities. and
reassessing
really, yeah.
what's important
Yeah.
in life. And which led us all to talk about what you do for a living as a passion.
Anybody that loves
anybody
their
that
job.
loves
Well,
what
if you
they do.
love what you do, you don't feel like you work a day in your life.
Yes.
That's right.
So try to love. That's why also it has been the SAG Awards and it has been the Independent Spirit Awards. And if you watch the SAG Awards, at least 3-4 people that won stood up there and said, I feel so grateful that I can do a job that I love so much and get paid for it. Because if you watch the news and if you listen to people that are really raising money, like that woman, I don't know that I have respect for Bethany Frankel. Is that her
I
name?
do now.
But after reading about what she's just accomplished,
She's done some pretty phenomenal
I
things.
have newfound
Me
love
too.
for her.
Me too.
Because I didn't
No,
really
she
know
is an
her or what
amazing,
she did.
Businesswoman and entrepreneur,
But she-
and
That
obviously
she's raised
philanthropist
$40
as
million
well.
so far for
Yeah.
the Ukraine. God bless her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
U.S. Reserve, from Texas, guys going over there to fight with the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
That have got
Yeah.
boarded planes in Dallas to leave. I guess
Yeah.
they were having to fly. I don't know where you fly in and walk into the Ukraine. I mean,
Warsaw.
I don't know how you get there right now.
Warsaw, I
but
think.
They're gone. They're going.
Well, on that downer, let's end this here. No.
Well, no. So
kidding, I'm
let's
not.
get back on the train of
Liking your job?
liking your life, appreciating your life, and
Appreciating.
loving your job, and appreciating what you do, and not ever working a day in your life because you love your job so much
That it doesn't feel like work.
that it doesn't feel like work.
Does that
And we
lead into our
have-
guest?
It does, doesn't it? Isn't that
think
like a
it does.
perfect description for him?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to introduce my friend.
My
and Amy's
friend.
friend, too. And all of our friends.
I don't know him.
Really. Eddie Trunk. He and
Eddie
I-
Trunk.
he
He's
and
so
I-
cool.
We've known each other forever and ever and ever. Like, so long. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, since I was
Like you met him in
12.
like 1920?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was 12.
Yeah.
Anyway, we only really reconnected over the past couple years.
We have lots to
Oh, yeah,
say.
lots to talk about.
Yeah.
But that's all there was to the intro.
No,
I don't have
I wrote a whole thing.
Oh, well, I've missed it. You can carry on that.
All right. Okay. I'm going to give the official
You
real
do it.
intro
no
here.
idea.
You
Okay.
do it.
So
Look,
today
look,
we
I'm
are
gonna show you this. I'm
talking
missing a whole paragraph.
to the one and only Eddie Trunk. He is the go-to broadcaster for all things rock and roll. Eddie is a true rock historian with his love of music going back over 40 years. I think maybe his professional career is almost 40 years or more. He turned his passion for rock music into a full-fledged career, starting in old school radio, then interviewing not only his favorite rock bands, but evolving into essentially the foremost expert on hard rock and heavy metal.
Yeah.
He has a daily show on SiriusXM Hair Nation called Trunk Nation, a weekly rock talk show, which I love that. It's like sports talk, but it's rock talk, on Sirius also, called Eddie Trunk Live. He has a syndicated New York City market radio show. It's also on KNAC.com. And a long-running podcast called the Eddie Trunk Podcast.
But aside from that, he does nothing.
No, he just probably sits on the couch eating
Amazing.
bonbons constantly. He does lots of live events. He's been on cruises and broadcast from all these rock cruises that are really cool. It is a miracle he has time for anything else. So let's all welcome our friend, Eddie Trunk. Hey.
Hi.
Eddie.
Hi, ladies. Hello.
Hi.
We're so glad that you joined us tonight. And Amy thinks this is the best intro anybody's ever had.
Oh,
One of-
I'm
it's not
honored.
the
Thank you
best,
very
but
much. I
it's-
appreciate that.
It was solid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She really likes you.
I do. I'm a huge fan of Eddie Trunk. I just think, I mean, not this is part of the interview or anything, but the very first time I ever heard you was before I even know that Fred knew you. And I brought you to Fred's attention, like, God, I'm listening to this guy all the time, and he's just so great. Like, he's such a great radio guy, but he's this great rock historian. I'm just so impressed. He's like, yeah, I'm glad you know this now. I'm like, oh, I thought I discovered something so amazing. Anyway, just saying. Big fan.
Well, thank you.
One thing Amy did say is that, what did you say, Amy, about the sport part, whatever?
I said he has a show that's like jock
his-
talk or like sports talk radio or something, but it's like rock talk.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
later in the show, I'm going to tell a very funny story that ties into that, which is why I just wanted to bring that up again, because it's very funny.
Okay, good.
We'll be the
Okay.
judge of that.
We'll all
No,
decide.
it's really
We'll
funny.
decide.
But that's actually how I describe the show I do daily as sports talk for rock fans. It's absolutely modeled after that because I'm a sports fan as well. So I wanted to just do that sort of format, but for rock fans and talk about music.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
so
Perfect.
so great. It's so cool.
That's all I really care about is music and sports.
It's
I don't
fun.
know, some people. Yeah.
Well, Eddie, I mean, you have such this like deep well and crazy reach for all things hard rock and heavy metal, right? Which comes with years and years and years of work in this industry, and everybody trusts you. So how did you get started? You were just a kid in New Jersey, right? That loved music. You loved Kiss, right?
Yeah,
I read
totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's all I cared about. My only passion was rock music, metal music. And from when I was really young, I was a terrible student in high school. I didn't go to college. I was terrible in high school, not because I wasn't smart, but it was just because I had no interest really in anything but this music that I loved and finding ways to share it with other people. And the music that I loved was very unfashionable when I was in high school. I graduated high school in '82. And I was made fun of for all the bands I liked. I was completely made fun of for it. I was a total outcast. And I was like, I'm going to show you guys one day. And I did everything that I could right out of high school to share the music with other people. I started writing for my high school newspaper. I worked in a record store right out of high school. I did college radio while I was still in high school, even though I never went to college. I started what many people think is one of the first ever metal radio shows. Was one of the first people ever played Metallica. So all of that stuff and just cumulative staying in it led to some TV stuff that I've done, and just staying in it. It's now next year will be 40 years since I started professionally right out of high school. So it's just a matter of staying consistent, staying true to what I believe in. And look, along the way, you're going to hit some bumps. Not everybody's going to like what you say or what you do. But, I believe that my biggest responsibility is to my audience, because I don't consider myself anything at the end of the day but a fan. And I want to always be able to relate to the fellow fans out there. And I think that's one of the big differences of what I do, is to always remember that and have that kind of conversation that I would have with people if I was at a bar that I would have on the radio. And that's what I've always tried to do.
I think it's amazing what Amy said, not only your wealth of knowledge, but your, all the questions to ask everyone, because you know every detail on every musician, every song, the lyrics, the riffs.
The year it was recorded, who played bass.
I'm looking up words as you're talking because I don't even understand the language. And it was so interesting. But not only that, when you're interviewing several at a time, you don't forget what you were saying to this one, you go back to that one. I mean, you're just an amazing, not only interviewer.
It's a gift. That is a gift.
Well, yeah, that's a super talent.
Yeah.
Well, you ladies are awfully flattering, and I really appreciate that. For me, I just look at it as it's when I was doing my TV show, that metal show, which was real popular, and a real popular element of that was this thing we used to do called Stump the Trunk, where people used to ask me trivia questions, and
That's
it became
funny.
a really popular thing. And I honestly don't feel like I know it all by any stretch. People say that, and I know that I maybe know more than the average person just by nature of the fact that I've spent my whole life in this business at a lot of different levels. I mean, some people know me for radio, some people know me for TV. I worked for a record label for 4 years. I worked in artist management for a while, writing, selling records. So my experience is pretty varied, and I was just always that guy when I was younger, that kid that when I got a record, I read every liner note right down to the thank yous to who mixed it, to who mastered it. And I still do to this day. I mean, to this day, I still love getting CDs. First thing I do is go through the booklets and the liner notes. I really appreciate all that stuff. So I just was always like a sponge with it. And it's one of the few things I've retained. And, really, there's not a lot of other things I know about. So it's a good thing I found a way to make a living doing this. And currently I do 6 live radio shows a week on Sirius XM that are all talk and interview about rock music. And I've got a couple music shows, and I'm just lucky that after all these decades and this much time in this business, that I can still hang in there and have the following I have, and the platforms I have, and the fans that I have. It means a lot, especially today more than ever, when we're in a world where anybody can have some sort of broadcast platform, but not everybody can have an audience. And since I've been doing this for 40 years, that audience has come along with me no matter what I've done. And I really value that, because having that trust and that connection to an audience is super important to have built over the years.
Do you have albums? Do you still have an album collection?
It's funny because I am, for the most part, a pretty old school guy in terms of how I think and the things that I like, but I am not at all on the vinyl resurgence kick. I don't have a turntable. I say when albums were replaced by CDs, I got rid of most of my albums, like many, but I did keep the stuff that I thought was collectible or the cool promo stuff. So I do have another room of a lot of those, but I am not at all personally on the vinyl kick that's happened the last couple of years. For those that are, more power to you, because I really do believe in having music physically and having that physical connection with it. I think that's a really important thing, which many don't care about anymore because it's a streaming world. But my preferred way of getting music still, and I still feel is by far the superior format, is CDs. I'm a CD guy all the way. For every reason why CD blew vinyl out of the water when it came out, to me, all those reasons still apply. And my personal taste for physical music is still getting CDs.
I'm not on a resurgence. I just kept all of my albums.
Good for you.
I was like you. I have 2 turntables in my house. I never got rid of them. I got new ones. I updated. But all of my albums. In fact,
She wants to be a DJ, really.
No, I don't. During 9/11, when my son was in elementary school and they had to do little jobs at home to make money so that then they could donate it. And I had my son and his friends alphabetize my albums.
Awesome. You know, I'm old enough to have, when I started in radio in '83, that was before that. When you were on the radio, you were queuing up albums. You were playing vinyl. And that's a harrowing thing as a kid starting out in radio, to have to queue up an album. And it's not like today where you can walk out of a radio studio for half an hour and just throw the computer in autopilot. Back then, you had to be there. When that song ended, you had to have the next record queued up, the needle set, the record clean, the needle clean. It was like a lot of stress back then. And that's how I broke in. So there will always be a great connection to vinyl for me for that reason. But to me, I mean, I'm not up for flipping and cleaning, anything like that. I love having my CDs. I rip them into my phone, and then I still have it physically as well. And I do believe, I think CDs have taken a big hit in the last few years with vinyl coming back, but there's every indicator that the CD resurgence is coming. So that's why I'm glad I at least held on to those.
Hooray.
Right, but wait, CD resurgence. Like, to me, I haven't bought a CD. I mean, I still buy and download entire bands' records.
That's what I was
online,
gonna say, yeah.
but I haven't actually bought a CD in probably a decade. I mean, do they even print CDs for every album that gets released?
Oh yeah, for sure. As a matter of fact, right here,
I should get back on that.
Today, this is the brand new Scorpions record on CD,
no
double
way.
CD.
Cool.
So there's CDs are still, as a matter of fact, this past year, a statistic came out that for the first time in about 8 years, CDs had a gain in sales.
Oh, wow.
And hold on to your hats for this one. The next format that has shown resurgence and people are starting to make again, and I'm not kidding you, is cassettes.
No way.
Oh, wow.
Like higher technology or same
kidding?
technology?
The same technology. There's multiple bands that are releasing their latest records on cassette, and they are selling. Some of it's novelty, just include in a box set, but others are selling. And there's actually a documentary about it, simply called Cassette, about the guy who developed the cassette, and they actually are a thing again.
Well,
Wow,
Diane
that's so
Warren,
cool.
who's a good friend of all of ours and who has been on our podcast, when she writes a song, she does it with a cassette. She uses her cassette player.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And she's written some songs.
She's
Written
some songs.
just a couple.
So Eddie, going back to what you were saying about, your connection with vinyl and how you initially got started now, and, you're part of this satellite radio, there are so many radio stations who are so nuanced, and it really just keeps cutting the consumer into more and more specific categories, right? You can almost be like, I just want to listen to heavy metal that has beats per minute that's higher than this, and you can find a radio station that's exactly that. So back when you started, and my dad was a DJ, before you started, radio would break bands. That was it. You would get, you'd pay to get play or make deals with stations that would break a band. And that clearly isn't the case anymore, right?
Well, that's clearly illegal.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So totally, right. But
Hits.
But that's what was happening, right? That's how so many rock bands broke and so many of these huge, massive bands broke. So how do you feel like this proliferation of new stations and new ways to get music, and TikTok is a huge music breaker now with how many ever billion subscribers or users? How has that changed the music industry, do you think?
Well, it's radically changed. But yeah, what you're talking about, Amy, certainly did go on back in the day, certainly in the 70s. But as Gloria said, or whoever said, it's highly illegal. It's known as payola or plugola. And to this day, we need to sign, every year, we need to sign documents and go through this testing thing to make sure that, to protect against that happening and to say that's not happening. But it was certainly a thing back in the day. But to answer your question, like today, I mean, you're right. The music distribution, the way people get it, the way people hear it is so incredibly different. I do still think radio plays a pretty important role in exposing people to music. But it is different. It's very fragmented. We're in a streaming world where people can listen to anything they want on demand. I think I'm very lucky and fortunate that of the 8 broadcasts a week that I do, 7.5 of them are all talk and interview. And the reason why I say that is because I love playing music on the radio, and I still do on one show. And I still think it's important. But the reality is this: anyone can just go to their phone and listen to anything they want whenever they want. Right. So for me, I'd rather provide some direction to people and be able to say, hey, today the new record by whoever came out. Here's what I think of it. Here's 30 seconds of it. You want to hear the whole thing, just go to wherever you listen and click and hear it. Mm-hmm. The challenge now, and I hate to say this because I love owning music physically, but I think what it's more about now more than ever for artists is getting them to let people know their music exists. The idea of selling it is almost obsolete right now. Bands tour to make money. The music is almost a promotional platform to support the tour or get you to buy a concert ticket or a t-shirt. And it's about letting you know, it's about letting people know that you exist and that you made music. Because the simple truth is record labels have almost become irrelevant. I still think they're very important in some cases, but there's documented proof of a lot of bands who have had a tremendous amount of success with no record label. So the gates are down. There's no gatekeepers anymore. And the good news is that means anyone can make music. The bad news is that means anyone can make music. And you've got a super flooded marketplace. So it's just about trying to let people know you exist and please listen to this song. And if you really love it, maybe you'll buy it and maybe you'll come to a concert. But that's really what it's become. It's about trying to get awareness and let people know it exists so they click on it more so than it is to try to get them to go to a record store and buy it.
Well, once upon a time, record labels used words called artist development, and those words don't even exist anymore.
Right.
A whole new vocabulary.
The biggest thing that I see as well, the huge change that I see, which really bums me out, is that all records that come out, the push is to the first week. So prior to the release date, there may be 2-3 singles or videos, sometimes more, before the full record's actually available. Because it's all about pushing that first week sales, so you get that first week chart number, and you can go in the press and say, hey, look, my record entered at number 6 this week, our highest ever. Great. But if you look at it in 3 weeks, usually the record's completely off the charts. And that ties into what I believe Gloria said, is that it used to be, let's watch the ride of this record up and down the charts for a year. A new single came out, we got our bullet back or whatever. Now it's front load, get that first week number. And by the third week, it's usually off the charts and the artist might not even be playing it live anymore. So it's so much about the first week sales now.
Eddie, that's what's happening in the whole world with this TikTok new world, millennial world we're in. It's got to be 15, 30 seconds, and people's attention span for anything. Even movies used to have a Risa, right? 3-4 weeks where they're out. Now it's like days, and the movie disappears.
No,
short
good.
attention
They stay
spans,
for a
it
while.
seems like. It's about getting that first. It's not about sustaining and working it throughout a year of ups and downs and watching it ebb and flow. It's about getting the pre-orders, getting the first week chart number, and then 2-3 weeks into it, sometimes the record unfortunately is forgotten. And I hate that it's like that, by the way. I mean, that's not my preference. I was talking to, forget what artist I was talking to recently, and I said to them, you want to come on and promote the record? And they're like, well, I guess, but it came out already like 3 months ago. And I kind of laughed because I'm like, used to be the campaign was at least a year, and it's like 3 months, it's already forgotten.
Wow.
But that's how it is now. It's very short, on to the next, keep moving.
You said something, I read something that you said recently, which goes back to the war that we were just talking about and about gas prices, that escalated. And you said something really interesting about how it's affecting touring also.
Well, yeah, I've been talking about that the last couple of days because obviously the industry was decimated by COVID, and all the artists that make their money on the road took a big hit. I mean, for a year, almost nobody was out. Last year was a mixed bag, and this year is setting up to be the first, hopefully, totally normal year of touring at every level, where everyone will be back out on the road, and in many places the COVID restrictions are either gone or seriously down. This is going to be the first year where artists could really get back out there and really make up for losing some time and some money on the road. And I'm just concerned that with the price of gas and inflation right now, I mean, I know a lot of people that are struggling, and depending upon where you are in the country, anywhere from $5 to $7 a gallon gas, it's greatly impacting people and their ability to go out and travel or have disposable income. And I just worry that if there's not that's not reeled in some way, then that might be something else the artists are dealing with, because obviously an artist goes on the road, it's expensive to fill those buses and those vehicles, and that expense is going to end up getting passed on to the ticket buyer, who themselves is going to have to figure out, hey, is this worth it, me leaving the house and driving 40 miles if gas is $10 a gallon? So
Absolutely.
I just think it sucks, because we just got out of one thing. It's like maybe our first normal summer, but now it's up against this whole other thing that's going on, and just don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's not.
And the hard part about that is I think that the really crappy part about that is pretty simple. The artists that are the small to medium level artists are the ones that are going to take that hit, because the big artists, like if AC/DC announces a tour tomorrow, no matter what's going on with the economy, people are going to find a way to go to AC/DC. But it's going to be the smaller artists that really need the work that are probably going to see that hit. I just was in Vegas last week. I watched 70,000 people turn up at a stadium to watch Metallica. Metallica's always going to pull those sort of numbers, but the smaller acts that really need to do business, those are the ones that some of the fans might take a pass on if they're really feeling a financial crunch.
Of course.
Yeah. 70,000 people. Does that mean COVID is officially over? Because I have a friend right now who is so sick on day 5 of like terrible COVID. And there's 70,000 people going to shows right now.
Outdoors.
And there wasn't a mask in sight in the 70,000
Yeah, I
people.
mean, I can't imagine there was.
It's hard to figure, Amy. I don't know. I mean, I just came off a cruise a couple weeks ago, music cruise, and that was mandatory vax for everybody, negative test as well. And I hung out with 8 people. A friend of mine had this big suite, and we hung out every night in this suite. And of those 8 people, 3 of them got COVID, and we were together every night hanging out shoulder to shoulder, having drinks. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's like we were all vaxxed, triple vaxxed. We were all checked before we got on the ship, and 3 people got sick. So I just saw an interview with the director of the CDC on 60 Minutes this past weekend, and she said, she thinks we're at a place now where this is basically going to be like the flu. Yeah. And if you're vaccinated, you probably won't get it too bad. If you have underlying conditions, unfortunately, it might, there's some people are going to be casualties of it, but for the most part, it's going to be something we're just going to be managing.
Yeah. And was that the same cruise with Rika and Andrew Daw?
No, I was on Monsters of Rock cruise. I don't think Rika was on that one, but there's a bunch that have gone out recently.
Eddie,
she kept sending pictures every day, and I'm like,
that was maybe Shiprocked or something.
Was it Orianthe on that cruise?
Yeah, that was the other one. Yeah.
Oh,
was Jeff Tate on your cruise?
Yes.
He's my boyfriend.
You have so many boyfriends.
She is so disgusting.
She's such a slut. You have so many boyfriends.
I know, but most of them are gay. But Jeff Tate's not. But he's just, he's old school boyfriend.
Vladimir Zelensky.
It's fine. Yeah, Zelensky is definitely my boyfriend. Top of the list.
Get in line. Get in line.
Move over, people.
Wait.
I do remember when the Cuomos, both of them are Amy's.
Yeah,
so
I broke up with them so fast.
She doesn't always have the best taste.
Broke up with those boys so fast.
That's been over for a while.
I have a question about your thoughts about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Eddie.
Okay.
You're a voter, right? You're a voter.
Here's my ballot right here. I know we just got this week.
We just got ours too.
Yeah. So you're not a nominator, but you're a voter.
Correct.
But so do you feel like there's a little more justice going on in the world?
No. I feel Look, I mean, I give them credit for making me a voter because I've been super critical of it. And to their credit, they didn't hold that against me. They said, hey, let's give you a vote. And it's a big deal to have to be an official voter because there's only about 1,000 of us, and we actually decide who really gets in of the people they nominate. So you're right, Amy. I don't nominate. That's a different committee. And then they turn over those 16 names to us in this. And then the 1,000 of us or so that are actual voters cast our ballots. I do believe there's been improvement in the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, you've seen Kiss, Alice Cooper, Rush, Cheap Trick, Deep Purple. So there's certainly been improvement. But are there still a lot of problems? Yes. And is it drifting even further away from the traditional definition of rock and roll? Absolutely. So there's a lot of issues still. There's a lot of things that are extraordinarily head scratching about a lot of aspects of it. But has there been some improvement? Yeah, I would say there has been to some degree.
Who's missing? Like, give me top 5, 10 who are totally missing.
Well, Judas Priest, who are on the ballot for the third time, to me, after Black Sabbath, Judas Priest is the most important band in the history of heavy metal. And they've been snubbed now for over 20 years, and they're on the ballot again. Now, I know the last time they were on a ballot, unfortunately, they didn't come close to getting enough votes. And in fan voting, they're very low right now, which is really concerning. Even though the fan voting, for people that don't know, the fan voting really doesn't mean anything in the big picture, but still, it's a marker. But Judas Priest, Pat Benatar, who is on the ballot, I think it's a ridiculous snub. There's so many. Foreigner, the first Foreigner record, which I happen to have right here, turned 45 years old today. When you think of all the hits this band has had, they've been eligible for 20 years for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and have yet to get in. Iron Maiden is another one. Ronnie James Dio is another one. In my opinion, Dio should have went in with Sabbath. It's crazy to me that he didn't. At that point, he had done 3 records with them. We've seen people go in with bands that have made 1 record with a group and been included. He wasn't, so he should go in for a lifetime thing. Dio, Rainbow, Sabbath, whatever, kind of like what they did with Randy Rhoads last year. So there's a lot to me that have been snubs and overlooked. And unfortunately, it all kind of lands in the hard rock world. They clearly have a bias against that. But again, there has been improvement, and there's so many more I could name that have been snubbed that should get in. You could make a case for Motley Crue. You could make a case for Styx. There's so many bands.
I think Priest will get in this year.
Who?
Priest, I think they will.
But it's weird because those are rock and roll bands. But then there's rap performers in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Is rap rock and roll?
Which by their definition, and I mean, it's gotten even broader than that. They're not only putting rap and hip hop in, but now they've nominated Dolly Parton this year. They nominated Whitney Houston. They nominated some jazz artists.
It's more of a Grammy. It sounds like it's a Grammy Hall of Fame.
Again, nothing against those genres of music, but when you have something called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you have so many rock bands not in that have been eligible for 20, 25 years, I think they have to come first before you start opening it up a little bit wider. But that's how they see it. It's their organization.
How could Foreigner not be in? I mean, I was in high school when you were in high school. We know. I mean, Foreigner was on every other song. How could they not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Look at it's crazy. I mean, they've never been nominated. And Mick Jones and Lou Gramm are in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, but they've never, in over 20 years, never even been nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Pat Benatar is finally on a ballot, but she is not in yet. So when you think, I mean, they cite influence as one of their top things. I mean, Pat Benatar was hugely influential to especially women in rock music. So it's crazy to me, but again, baby steps. There are some improvements being made, but there's still a lot of holes and a lot of things that are very head scratching.
But these people are going to be dead before they get in. I mean, you say baby steps, they need
some are.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I have the big problem with artists that are fast tracked, meaning, for instance, Foo Fighters, and I love Dave and Taylor and their friends and their amazing band. But Foo Fighters, first time ever eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. First time eligible, get in.
Yeah.
Deep Purple waited 25 years And by the time they got in, John Lord was dead. So
Yeah.
it doesn't, to me, there's got to be a seniority to it. And, but here's the other factor, which people kind of forget when they think about this. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is also, although it's a nonprofit, it still needs to make money. It's on HBO. It needs to get a rating, and they need to have bands performing that will sell an arena. So if they don't put a Foo Fighters in or a big name act that can sell an arena, their gate is going to suffer. Their ratings are going to suffer. So make no mistake, as much as it's about cred and whatever they want in there, the reality is, at the end of the day, it's still a TV show and it's still a ticketed arena gig that they have to sell. And that comes into play.
100%. Of course. I think that guides it completely, right?
I have a stone in the front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with my name and my son's name, my boyfriend's, right in the front.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how hard it is to keep relationships together, bands together, artists that are, going through life together. Who do you admire that has been able to, I mean, we know the Rolling Stones are still together, but who do you think should have stayed together? Who were you sad that broke up and couldn't get it back together? Who do you wish that could have kept it together?
Well, I think it's the bands that have kept it together that are remarkable to me would be Aerosmith, for one, which still has its original lineup. I mean, the bands you can count that have all original members, you can count them on one hand, really. ZZ Top was the longest running one up until recently when Dusty Hill passed away. U2 have never had a lineup change. That's been over 42 years. So that's pretty remarkable. The story of Rush is incredible. The same three guys, pretty much for 40 plus years. One of them passes away, band ends. I mean, that doesn't happen all that much. I grew up a huge Kiss fan. That was like my first favorite band as a kid. I really wish the original four could have held it together. That would have been amazing. But, coming into the 80s, they're a band like Rat, for example, if you want to get more into the 80s.
Yeah.
That's a band that's had so many lineup changes. And I think people forget how big they were, how many big songs they had on MTV, how many big records they had. But they've had so much upheaval and changes over the years that it's really hurt them to the point that they're really not together anymore. So a lot of these bands, unfortunately, somehow shoot themselves in the foot. Sometimes they pull it back together and end up reuniting, and there's a lot of interest in that. And then sometimes they just can't get it together and drift away. But there's cases all around. But I really admire the bands that have been able to hold together with the original guys that started it. I mean, that's unheard of. And Rush did that for most of their career. ZZ Top did until very recently when somebody passed away. U2, remarkable that they've been able to do that this long. Motley Crue is still the original lineup, although they had different members at one point, but they're back to original whenever they start up again. So there are examples. And the really interesting thing is, look at Motley Crue or Poison, who also have original members as far as 80s bands. And those are both bands that by their own admission are pretty dysfunctional, but somehow they make it all work and keep the original guys together. And when I've asked them about it, they say the key is often separate buses.
I was just going to say
Absolutely.
separate buses.
That's funny.
Absolutely.
Which
That
doesn't
does
seem
it.
crazy. Like you quadruple that expense just
But
so
that
you can
absolutely
just so
does
you
it.
can make a tour.
That's all right.
But think about a tour of like Rat original, Skid Row original, Queensryche original. Like it could be so massive, and it does seem like just personality issues, like really just people not getting along.
Well, yeah, Amy, you mentioned Queensryche and that you're a fan of Jeff's. I mean, that's a great example of a band that's so splintered. You have two guys that use the name Queensryche, Eddie and Michael, the bass player and guitarist. Jeff's out there doing his own thing. Chris DeGarmo, who's a huge part of the band and wrote a lot of the songs, has been out of it for 20 years.
He's a
like
pilot,
an
right?
aviation
Something.
guy
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And then the original drummer, Scott, nobody really knows what's going on with him. So that's like splintered into 4 different parts. And I actually had Jeff on my show recently, and I said,
I know.
everyone's still alive, thankfully. Is there any chance? And he goes, well, we were offered a tremendous amount of money for the original band to get back together recently. And 2 of the 5 guys, they said they didn't want to do it. And that was the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really like, it's got to be so excruciating to be in those relationships when you're offered this crazy money and it's still like, no.
I think it depends upon everyone's personal situation too. So like 5 guys in the band, if 2 or 3 of them went through 3 divorces or drug habits or whatever, they want that reunion because they need that money.
Yeah.
If 2 guys took care of their money, invested it, wrote all the songs, get all the publishing, they're totally comfortable.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, no, I don't want to deal with that guy. Again, he's a lunatic. So it's very much, I think, related to what your personal situation is. Did you take care of your money? Do you still have it? Or are you in the hole and you need to get a quick hit?
Yeah.
Do you know why I think you 2 are still the original members?
Why?
Because I don't think anybody would work with Bono besides.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't really know anything about
that's
them.
mean. You know what band I wish would get back together or tour? Bad Company.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Are they alive?
I don't know. Are they?
Yeah. They really don't. Mick Ralphs, the guitarist, has been ill and really hasn't been touring with them. When they do play, Howard Leese has been playing with them on guitar. But 3 of the 4 original guys are still alive. But Paul Rodgers basically tours solo and does a bunch of Bad Company songs. If it's under the name Bad Company and they play, then it's Simon Kirke, the drummer, and Paul Rodgers. But the bass player and the guitar player are not actively in it anymore. I mean, some of these guys sadly are just older. I mean, they just can't do it. I mean, you look at Foreigner, that's a really interesting situation, Foreigner now, because for the last 20 years, for the most part, Foreigner has been no original members. There hasn't been one original member in that band. It is essentially a tribute band, a great tribute band, and I'm not knocking it, and it's amazing what they do, but Mick Jones rarely, if ever, plays full shows or any shows with them. And when Mick Jones does not play, which is the majority of the time, there's not one member of Foreigner who had anything to do with the songs that they're playing. The reason why I think Foreigner is able to get away with that, has for so long, and again, I don't mean this as a knock in any way. I love the band, but Foreigner was not built on star personalities. Foreigner, most bands are built on the guitar hero and the great looking lead singer, that dynamic, Tyler Perry, David Lee Roth, Eddie Van Halen, Mick and
Tyler Perry.
Tyler.
That sounded funny. I know.
Yeah, that's funny.
Steven Tyler, Joe Perry. But Foreigner wasn't like that. Nobody ever really knew who was in Foreigner.
They were a songs band.
Yeah.
Songs.
Yeah.
They were a song.
It's all about the songs.
Yeah.
Mick Jones, an amazing songwriter. Lou Gramm, an amazing singer. But neither of them were posters on people's bedroom walls. They were just kind of like these guys that made this great music, but nobody really knows whoever was in the band.
But how well did Mick Jones do with his kids?
I don't know his kids.
Mark Ronson and Samantha Ronson.
Oh, no way.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I didn't either. Stumped.
Now I'm going to have to Google it.
Stumped.
Consider me stumped.
Okay, I'm Googling it just to make
in
sure.
case, 'cause
But no, I
seriously.
know I'm right, but I'm going to Google. I don't really trust
So
me.
Eddie, is there
I make stories up.
anybody that you've totally fanned out about or been like really nervous to interview? And B, is there anybody that you haven't interviewed? Period. Is there anybody that you would like to interview that you haven't?
The person I'd like to interview that I haven't, that is still with us, would probably be Jimmy Page. I met him, but I never interviewed him. I interviewed Robert Plant twice, but never interviewed Jimmy Page. So he would be the guy. For the longest time, the answer to that question was Eddie Van Halen. I interviewed Eddie once, but it was a phone interview, and it was about 25 years ago. Sadly, that can't happen anymore. But of the people that are alive, Jimmy Page would be the answer to that question. And as far as being like starstruck or what have you, I learned a long time ago that if you're going to be able to have real relationships with people in the industry, no matter how much of a fan you may be, try not to behave like that. It makes them uncomfortable. It's just something you don't want to do. And I'm lucky enough to have, tremendous relationships with so many of these people who are now friends. I could pick up the phone and call or text. It means a lot to me that we have that trust, and I would never breach that. So I don't ever compromise that, and I don't ever act like that outwardly. But
What about on the
I mean, Aerosmith were a super, super important band to me. And there was a time where I, not long ago, probably about nine years ago or so, I was at a few of their shows through the Midwest, and they invited me to fly to the next city with them on their plane. And sitting on a private plane with Aerosmith and Steven Tyler asking me if I wanted some hummus on the flight was just surreal.
That is
you know?
surreal.
But I was super cool on it. I did not, no, Steven, I'm good, you know. But inside, I'm like, this is just stupid, you know.
Yeah.
So there
Especially
are
since you were
moments like
hungry
that where
anyway.
inside, I'm like, geeking out, you know. Hey, bowling with Geezer Butler. I can't forget that. Gloria's sitting right there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
He's showing Geezer how to throw a bowling ball. That was pretty darn cool.
He's gotten quite good, right, Risa?
That's pretty cool.
Oh, he's a good bowler, Terry.
Yeah,
She's a
she
good bowler.
bowls now.
I know. Well, I got him into it.
You don't understand some of the
did.
things. This
You
poor man, you
absolutely
don't
did.
understand some of the things that we've gotten him to do.
Poor thing.
Poor thing. We made him
He's
ski.
a good sport.
We made him go on the bobsled. We made him go on a
The real
snowmobile. The real bobsled.
In
It's
Utah.
at Olympic Park.
Olympic, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
By the way, that was a great interview, Eddie. I love listening to Geezer's, two of his interviews on your podcast.
Oh, well, yeah, thanks. I mean, look, and again, the Sabbath guys are super special to me. I mean, you know, Tony sent me a text for Christmas, wishing me a Merry Christmas. And I just turned to my wife and I'm just like, and I texted Tony back and said, hey, thanks, Tony. I hope you're doing
Oh, he's
good.
such a
But I
sucker.
did turn to my wife and I'm like, how stupid is this? Like, Tony Iommi just texted me Merry Christmas. Like, there's that doesn't make sense to me even, but it means a lot. It
But
really
wait a
does.
minute. I learned more about Gloria's husband than I have in all the years I've known Gloria and been out to dinner with her and her husband. I mean, I learned so much on the 2 hours
From the
I listened
podcast.
to him.
Yeah.
It's very
I think I see and talk to Gloria more than her husband, to be honest with you.
lucky you. You have to be, it's very sweet though. You have to think of yourself when you're in those situations as that 19-year-old you. That, right? About going,
that
oh
part
my
never
God.
goes away, right?
Yeah, a 19-year-old him probably would have really liked me as a 19-year-old me.
And Eddie, wait, I want, before we lose Eddie, who would be your perfect dinner party of rock stars or musicians? I mean, who would be like your dream team dinner?
But wait a second, Mick Jones was stepfather. So I just wanted to correct it.
Oh, okay.
So you don't quote me. Stepfather.
Thank you.
Okay, stepfather.
Ronsons.
Okay.
That counts.
Kind of.
Boy, oh boy, who would be the
Dead or alive.
Dinner party, dead or alive.
dead or alive?
Yeah, it could be dead or alive. Yeah.
I just made that up.
Thank you, Amy.
It sounds like an Aerosmith song. Was that Aerosmith? Oh, Bon Jovi.
Yeah, Bon Jovi.
I'm trying to think of people that are. I think that what would be good would be people that are big personalities. You know, that people who are real, you know, good talkers and good storytellers, and you wouldn't want people who just sit there and not say anything if you wanted to have a dinner party. So guys that come to mind that would fit that bill would, right off the top of my head, would be Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony, two of the most fun people, real people, great people. They love to crack open drinks, and Sammy would be mixing drinks behind the bar as he often does when I'm around. So Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony absolutely would be there in a minute. I just had dinner with this guy a couple of days ago in Vegas, Sebastian Bach, who is like always the
Hilarious.
super animated ringleader. He'd be a lot of fun. I don't know him, but I think David Lee Roth would be a lot of fun at that dinner. David and Sammy could sit next to each other and see what happens with that.
Oh God.
And Fred Corey for the
yes,
levity.
we have Fred.
Fred for his impressions. I would just want Fred sitting next to me doing impressions of Paul Stanley all night.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, hysterical.
That's a good idea.
Those are a few off the top of my head. There's many more, but the guys that are the fun guys that don't take it all too seriously, that don't get all hung up, that don't get, you know, butthurt about, you know, somebody throwing around some jokes, you know, just having a good time and having some laughs. That would be the most fun.
So now that you said that, butthurt. What I think you're so good at in your interviews is I hear people and, you know, all these rock stars and musicians maybe haven't been through a lot of years of therapy, maybe don't have a ton of self-awareness, maybe, you know, have some issues like that. And you ask questions that I think people want an answer to, and they get a little uncomfortable, right? Because you're asking them to sort of
Bare their
reveal
soul.
a feeling or reveal like an inner conflict that they have with somebody, and they're not going to do it. But yet you do pin them in the nicest way. You kind of then ask them in another way, and then you ask them in another way. So have you ever had an interview that gets kind of heated and contentious because you're trying to get an answer to something that you kind of ruffle their feathers a little too much and it doesn't go so great? Have you ever gotten in a fight or hurt a relationship or something from an interview?
I have a pretty good read on that. Like I try to look, my job is to ask the questions that the audience wants to know, right? So that's me doing my job. And I tell one of the things I hate more than anything is before I do an interview, getting a call from a publicist, a manager, someone saying, hey, we need you to stay away from this, this, and this. Because those things are inevitably exactly what the audience wants to know about.
Of course.
I often find that the artist doesn't even know about those conditions. And I've had that happen a number of times. Like I did the first interview with Slash after he rejoined Guns N' Roses. It was at the Rainbow on the patio. And they were like, you know, we don't want to talk too much about GNR. I'd heard this. And then as soon as Slash sat down, the first thing out of his mouth was like, so here's what's going on with Guns. I did an interview with Steve Perry, formerly of Journey. First interview he had done in years. This was a few years ago. And I got so wound up by noise coming at me from various handlers about what he would and wouldn't want to talk about. And I just tuned it all out. And as soon as Steve sat down, he was just like, anything you want, let's go. So I think that I've earned that kind of trust with these people. And I'm not looking for a gotcha moment. I'm not looking to do anything like that. And I never get into, like, I'm not a gossipy guy. I don't want to know about how much you lost in your divorce or any of that. That's not of interest to me, who you're dating, I don't care about any of that. But when it comes to the music stuff that's relevant to my audience, it's important to be able to ask what I need to ask. And I tell people this all the time. I'm like, please, I'm not going to tell you how to run your thing, but don't tell me what I can and can't say.
Right.
You can answer however you want, but don't deprive me of the right to ask the question.
Yeah.
Because if I don't ask the question to my audience, it looks like I'm dropping the ball.
Right.
You can answer however you want. You can say, I don't want to answer that. I'm not comfortable with that. And I'll leave you alone. But you can't tell me that I can't do it. I'll give you one example. I had an interview set up with Zakk Wylde. I've known Zakk before he was Zakk Wylde. His real name is Jeff, and he's from New Jersey. And I used to see him play in the clubs in New Jersey. And he had, he'd been playing with Ozzy for like 10 years. And when he was first let go from Ozzy, this would have been maybe 10, 15 years ago, he had been booked to come on my radio show prior to his being dismissed from Ozzy at that time. And I got a call from the label guy, and he said, I know you have Zakk on tomorrow. We just need to make sure you don't ask him anything about not being in Ozzy anymore. I'm like, what? Like, how is that going to look? That's the biggest thing that just happened. How would I possibly do an interview like that and not ask that question? He can answer however he wants, but how would that look as an interviewer? And they go, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. I said, you know what? I don't want the interview then. I said, because that's going to make me look like an ass. So I didn't do the interview, but I know Zakk well enough that I called him and I said, hey, I just want you to know, I mean, you can come on anytime, but here's why I couldn't do this. You understand. And he had no idea that condition was put on me.
Why would that happen?
I know him well enough to call him up and say, hey man, here's what went on. And again, this is a long time ago. And he's like, that's stupid. He goes, why would they? I go, I don't know. So most of the time you find out it's not coming from the artist. It's coming from this wall that's around them that they think they're doing the right thing. But in reality, it's just like, they can answer however they want, but let's just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I do too.
We should let Eddie do what we do at the end of
But
our
wait
podcast.
a second. I
Yeah.
have to go back to that sports music thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it's a
'Cause
really,
it's
funny,
really
story.
funny story.
I
We
think
know.
it's funny.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think it was a year after Ronnie passed away, you were doing the metal show in Los Angeles. And people were going on to talk about Ronnie. And it was all very sweet and just heartfelt and really nice and whatever. So rewind 10 years before that or 15 years before that, Terry Geezer and Tom Morello met at a Rams game. They both knew who each other was, obviously, but Steve Barnett's wife's father managed the Rams in St. Louis at the time and got them both tickets together. And Kurt Warner was the quarterback. So fast forward, they're doing this show, and everybody's very sad and talking about it. And so Terry was just on with Eddie, and he was still live, but didn't know it. And and so Tom was just mic'd to go on next. And Tom said to Terry, "Are you watching Dancing with the Stars?"
No.
And so Terry said, "Yeah,
Love it.
I am. Gloria watches it, and she's making me watch it." And Tom said, "Yeah, me too." "And what about Kurt Warner? How good is he doing? Can you believe Kurt Warner's on there? And I think he's going to win it." They had like a 5-minute conversation, these two rock guys that are sad about Ronnie and talking about Kurt Warner on Dancing with the Stars for 5 minutes.
That's the best.
It was hysterical.
But it was on the radio, or where?
Well, it was live. Somebody came running up and took them both apart.
It was live. Where? Where was it being broadcast?
Forever
On
the Metal
Eddie's
show.
on
Yeah.
Eddie's show.
No, it was backstage at the TV show. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
But Gloria, that ties in another thing, which of course we all know that are in this business. It's funny because so many times, even now, especially now, I'll walk out from backstage at the show, wherever I'm at and whoever's room I'm in, and I'll walk out and there'll be fans out there out by the door and like, wow, or they could see you like, what were you guys talking about? Like, what went on backstage? And I'm like, oh, you're talking about when we're getting our next colonoscopy, what blood pressure we're on, how our
That's what Fred
cholesterol
says.
is,
Yeah,
taxes,
that's funny.
the price of this. I'm like, they think there's this debauchery going on.
Yeah,
And we're sitting
yeah,
there
yeah.
talking about like, oh man, I got sciatica.
Yeah, totally.
That's what's really going on.
when I
That's
when I
funny.
first met Fred, it was whatever version of Rat. Oh gosh, I forget who it was. Anyway, whoever was headlining the tour was calling it the Metal Musel Tour.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like,
That's funny.
oh, it was Quiet Riot. It was Quiet Riot. Yeah, that was so funny.
But
So
we
how's
should have-
Risa? You
We
go.
should have Eddie do, because at the end of our show, which we have to end in 15 minutes, but at the end of our show, we do two things. We talk about raggeries, which is the thing the thing
annoyance.
that annoyed you this week, perhaps, or the last 2 weeks. Like, like if somebody talks on their cell
Or
phone
you
in
can
the
go back
grocery
10
store.
years. It doesn't
You
matter.
can.
Something annoying.
We do
this
that.
week.
And then we talk about kudos, about when somebody's done something really wonderful. So let's talk about raggeries first. But do you have any, Eddie?
Or do you want to hear
We go
ours to
first.
give you a start?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Ours
okay.
is a little heavier, I think, than annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, you're two?
Well, mine,
Go
You go
ahead.
first, Amy.
my raggery this week
Yeah.
is Russia.
Oh, okay, well.
Well, that's
Yeah.
mine too.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah.
without a
Copied.
doubt.
My
He totally
kudos is Volodymyr Zelensky.
Oh,
Woo.
Well, I just think what a leader.
Boyfriend.
That's my kudos. Like if we could all be that true to what we stand for
Loyal
and
and-
what we want.
Yeah.
do you have a kudos, or are you
I don't
just going to?
think-
I
Are you
do.
going along with Amy?
But wait a minute. It's not just being true to what you stand. I mean, this is an amazing humanitarian leader. You could be true to bad things too. I mean, this is just a guy that's so full of goodness.
Who won Dancing with the Stars.
Amazing.
Kudos.
I do
Just
ha-
for what she's done. Do you know she's raised nearly $40 million for Ukraine? Bethany Frankel, some Real Housewife.
I did not
She was
know
the
that.
girl. I've never seen a Housewives, but yeah, she invented like the skinny margarita
Good
drink or
businesswoman.
whatever.
Good
Like
drink
a-
Oh, right. No, I know who
Oh,
she
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
but I didn't know about
But
that.
now you have to
She
love
has
her
a
for that.
foundation, and they're up to nearly $40 million already.
My
Raggery.
raggeries, if you will, certainly the price of gas. And
Yes.
that is impacting so many of my friends who don't have a lot of money and have to get to work. And it's just crippling people. It's crazy. And on a lighter note, I fly a lot, and there's been this trend lately of people watching movies on their iPads or phones without headphones or earbuds
No.
in, so that I need to hear their audio, and it makes me nuts.
That is
That's a good raggery.
That's a good one.
That's a
good
really
no
good
matter
one.
no matter how low they think they're putting it,
No, you can still hear it across the street. Yeah.
if I'm reading a magazine. So that is ridiculous.
That is a true raggery. That's the true spirit of a raggery.
That's what our
Yeah,
raggeries
and
are.
that's like when people do that with their phone. They'll have speaker on
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talking in the middle of a restaurant. Why do they think nobody else can hear the conversation?
But they want him to. It make him sound like a big shot. It's annoying as
Yeah,
shit.
stupid.
Asshole.
My local Target, I walk around and sometimes I see the same woman there, like
Talking on the
several
phone?
times. And she walks around pushing her cart with her phone on speaker.
Would you tell
I
her
would
to
have to
stop?
hit her with my
I
cart.
want to run her over.
Hearing one end of the conversation is bad enough. I don't need to hear both.
Okay, I have a good raggery.
Okay.
Okay, speaking of the price of oil, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia will not take Biden's calls, but they're taking Putin's calls.
How do you know that?
Because it's been in the news all day, Glow. I don't know where you've been, but anyway, I think they're all they're loving this price of oil rise. They're loving this war. That's why they're taking Putin's calls. This has been the best week of their lives in a long time. And then my kudos is that the first Capitol rioteer defendant was found guilty on all 5 charges today.
Oh, yeah, I heard that. That was good.
His son testified against him. He was one of the 3 percenters. Anyway, so the first one's been convicted on everything. So, hallelujah.
Toot toot.
Good.
I want to give props, kudos to a guy named Lanny Cordola. Do you guys know who that is?
No.
No.
Okay. So Lanny Cordola is a noted guitar player from the 80s who was in a band called House of Lords. And
I
he
know.
also, I believe, played guitar for Rod Stewart for a little bit. And a number of years ago, Lanny lived in Los Angeles, had a great career as a musician, and decided that he was going to give it all up and move to Afghanistan, where he teaches young girls guitar covertly. He goes to these areas where, in that country, a girl can't be a girl and can't be educated and can't learn guitar. And at incredible personal risk, he goes into basically these cave shelters and helps these young girls by teaching them guitar and just giving them an escape from their life, because even at 12, 13, 14 years old, at that age, they are responsible for the family. And
that'd be my kudos.
he has done remarkable work over there. And when we pulled out of Afghanistan and that country crumbled and the Taliban took over, those girls have been at tremendous, tremendous risk. And Lanny will not leave the country. I've gone as far as having people in DC offer to pull him out, like special ops people, and he will not leave the girls behind because he knows they will die.
Is he a friend of yours?
Zelensky. What a hero.
Eddie, is he a
He
friend
is
of
there,
yours?
and he has enlisted people like Tom Morello, like Sammy Hagar, like others, and he's made music for charity to help these girls and use these musicians to help him. So it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful charity that he does. And he's now in Pakistan, but he won't leave the region until he knows the girls can be brought to safety. It's a remarkable story.
is he
He's
a
a
friend of-
remarkable person.
Is he a friend of yours, and can we donate to that charity?
Yeah, there's the chat. If you want to look it up, it's miraculouslovekids.org. And you can learn more about Lanny's whole story there. Miraculouslovekids.org.
I love that. I love that about him.
Yeah, incredible.
I do have a kudos also, which sort of along those lines, but from a tragedy, the Huvain family lost their youngest brother. Oh, I can't do it. Never mind.
Just say the name of the charity.
You say it.
Okay, so the charity is the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
And so you can donate to that in the name of Chris Huvain.
Chris Huvain. Absolutely. Yeah. Life is hard.
Yes.
We are very lucky to not be being bombed right now. I mean, I know
Yeah,
there are a lot
no
of
doubt.
struggles
Yeah,
out
no,
there.
Kiss the ground we're in when we're talk about how much tax we have to pay. Hallelujah, happy to pay it for the freedom we have here.
Well, I mean, you know, people can definitely have there are hardships out there, not to be, you know, taken lightly. And some people have it a lot easier than others, that's for sure. But just a reminder to be grateful for what you do have and the friends and family that you have that are healthy and alive right now.
Remember to tell your loved
That's all we
ones
can
that you
do.
do love them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about
For
your
sure.
girlfriends?
Thank you, Eddie, for being
Yeah,
our
Eddie, thank
guest
you so
today.
much.
Eddie, thank you so much.
It was a
You're,
pleasure, ladies. Thank you. It's
thank
great
you,
to see
Eddie.
you all,
Excellent
and
guest, yeah.
continued success with the podcast and the video cast and what you're doing. And
Thank
hope
you.
to see you all in person soon and not through a
I'll see
screen.
you in Austin.
Yeah, me
I'll
too.
see you next week.
Rainbow.
And I'll see you in Austin. Yes,
Yes.
Gloria. Look forward to it.
Me too.
All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very, very much.
Bye-bye.